Hi, I'm Stacy and I'm a graphic designer. And for the past 15 years, I've been running a small design studio focused on visual identity and storytelling through branding, illustration, and web design. Early in my career, I owned and operated a letterpress, and I had a small studio, and I worked extensively in printmaking and taught typography to design students. That hands-on experience has shaped how I think about design at a foundational level, like spacing and repetition, restraint, and process. This early physical work with type has continued to inform how I approach both print and digital work now. I'm deeply influenced by the arts, particularly the methods of Agnes Martin. Her work is sometimes considered divisive. The minimal or seemingly repetitive nature of her canvas and 1-inch grids, drawn with rollers and pencil, often challenge viewers. But I am actually quite drawn to that process of restraint and discipline. In my commercial work, I collaborate with organizations where design supports larger cultural or narrative goals. Recently, I worked on the rebrand for Multitude Films, an independent production company that's dedicated to transformative culture change through nonfiction storytelling. And alongside my design practice, I'm also working on a children's book that's centered around swimming. It's about exploring comfort, confidence, and connection to the water. And the book follows three characters, Luna, Mira, and Soul, and each represent a different emotional relationship to swimming. The illustrations emphasize calm and presence, and I hope the story will eventually help children experience the water as a place of comfort. I like to take photos and document what I notice. I usually bring my camera on daily walks. It's kind of a straightforward way to stay observant. I'm drawn to repetition, texture, and just the kind of banal, quiet structure that exists in ordinary places. I've also studied conservation through the Florida Master Naturalist program here in New Smyrna Beach, where my final project became a young adult field guide focused on making coastal systems more approachable through accessible writing and playful illustration. That interest actually continues through my volunteer work here with the Marine Discovery Center, where I help document their Living Shoreline project.
Hey, I'm Lee. I work in moving image and sound. I play music. I play the guitar. I'm interested in exploring and pushing stringed instruments beyond their limits. I play a lot of things poorly. Maybe that's my superpower. I have major imposter syndrome. I somehow fell into a pretty crazy rock and roll career. But starting at the beginning, I grew up in Atlanta, and from a really young age, I was obsessed with recording. Taping the TV, sounds around the house, anything I could capture. That turned into something more serious when I went to my first punk hardcore show as a teenager. It was loud, chaotic, and completely communal. It's kind of that moment where everything changed, seeing people my own age making work, organizing shows, pressing records, and building their own worlds taught me an idea that stayed with me ever since. You don't wait for permission, you build the thing yourself. That DIY mindset carried me through playing in bands, booking shows, and eventually into studying graphic design. This is ultimately how Stacy and I met in the Atlanta design community. I moved to London for a while to study moving image, which was a major turning point for me. I started a design video company with some friends, and we did a ton of documentary there for the Museum of London, where I began to understand how deep a role that sound played in the visual. It's 50% of the picture. And I've always been interested in how it shapes emotion and memory, how it anchors images, space, and experience. So out of necessity on these jobs, I started doing my own sound design, scoring, field recording, and those tools became central to my practice. At the same time, I was still making music with friends back home. That process eventually became the band Algiers, which unexpectedly took off, and all of a sudden I was touring the world, playing on The Late Show, had music that I wrote in film and TV. Through Algiers, I've done stuff with all sorts of crazy artists like Massive Attack, Portishead, Zach from Rage Against the Machine, Sam from Future Islands, Mos Def, Billy Woods, Big Roo from the Dungeon Family. I toured with Depeche Mode in all the major football stadiums across Europe, played all over the world. I was a resident artist here back in 2021. One of the other mentoring artists was the Indigenous performance artist and painter, Greg Deal. We actually didn't really talk to each other or make friends until maybe the third week or so. And it was at that point, one day at lunch, he was asking me questions about music and my band. And we figured out we grew up listening to a lot of the same records. He'd never played music or been in a band, but wanted help on something for a performance art piece he was working on. We sat in the music studio and I helped him write his first song in about 45 minutes and coached him through how to approach his vocal approach. I thought that was it, but he just kept booking things and asked me to do stuff. And all of a sudden, now we put out 3 records. This past year, we toured with Pearl Jam. We were in Europe. We're heading back at the end of the month to do a small run through the UK and Europe again. It's weird to think about how that conversation in this space literally reshaped my life and career. I still have a parallel vision and sound-based practice trying to focus on installation, moving image, and spatial audio. In many ways, I'm still doing what I did as a kid, listening closely, recording what's around me, and trying to make sense of the world through sound. So moving into our project, before handing back to Stacy, I'll add this little bit. At the core of everything I do is time. I was thinking recently about how everything I do is almost exclusively with a time-based medium. Rhythm for me is a way of expressing the movement of time, and if history is a consequence of time, then history is always present in the work as well. I can't alter time itself, but within my practice I try to slow it down, rearrange it, loop it, or momentarily hold it still, so I can better understand memory, fear, displacement, and place. Through field recording, hauntology, and composition, I'm often thinking about sound as a kind of living archive, something that carries cultural memory forward even as it fades.
So Lee and we moved to New Smyrna Beach from Atlanta in 2020. It was a pandemic-related move, supposed to be temporary, but we're still here. But that's really where this project began. In 2020, we started taking sound walks because we were sort of out exploring our new surroundings. And those walks gradually turned into these loop-based ambient music creations that we paired with like simple notes and data and visuals from each site. We called the project the Aural Field Survey, or AFS. But through this residency, we're kind of expanding upon this initial work from 2020. So over the next 5 weeks, we'll create one ambient piece each day, directly in the field using a portable setup. Alongside the sound, we'll be collecting photography and basic environmental information, things like location, temperature, wildlife activity, and other landscape details. We'll also invite people to share short reflections about sound, adding a human layer to the project. So the Aural Field Survey is basically a project where we go into different landscapes and we listen. We record the natural sounds of a place, turn them into simple loop-based ambient compositions, and at the same time we document what we're seeing through photos and basic environmental notes. Over time, each location will become its own small portrait and part of a sound piece and a part of a visual record. The work will ultimately come together as a multisensory and immersive exhibition, which will feature a printed newsprint publication, a map of the recording sites, and even a microsite that will archive the process and the place. At its core, AFS is about listening closely and treating sound as both documentation and reflection. I'm actually responsible for the visual side. Each day I'll be photographing, taking notes, and mapping the landscape, and then collecting that visual and spatial data into helping document the environment around us.
So I'll be exclusively doing sound and recording video. My plan is to essentially set up a video frame and then improv with the environment, score the frame in each of these spaces. So for me, part of every project I do is about learning something new, like a new piece of gear or instrument or trying a different process. And for this, I plan to use this time to get better at pedal steel, get back to working with magnetic tape. I very much want to explore and incorporate the unheard, like radio waves and maritime signals, memory. Different from our original project intent is me bringing music or a piece of something into these spaces that we will inhabit. I'm trying to figure out why that is important to me now. I guess I see it more than just documentation of that space, but also acknowledging my presence in that space, almost like bringing an offering. I have to work through this idea some. Incorporating radio and phone call recordings of memories of sound prompts are just as relevant as the material things that make up this area. My hope is that all this mess of pieces can be assembled and edited in interesting ways as to present an accurate and deeper understanding of this physical space and area that we call home.